Thank you all so much for joining our second in our series of webinars from Nourish, Colorado. If you attended our first one, that was on healthy food incentives and happened on December 15th. And then our third webinar will be happening in February, and that will be on healthy food policy. But today you are here to learn about healthy food and institutions, with the purpose really being to focus on what can we harness school food to be. We ask our school meal programs to do so much with so little. We want them to support the local economies and the farms. We want the meals to be scratch made. We want them to feed every child, meet their varying palates, and so on and so forth. They have so many expectations on them. However, that opportunity is there, and we've seen schools do amazing things even within the constraints that they have. So, what do we need to change so that every school meal program across the nation, no matter their wealth, is able to meet these expectations and ultimately exceed them? So thank you for joining us today. What to expect is we have our 5 panelists. We'll be asking them a series of questions. They will respond, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. You can type your questions in as you go to the chat box, and then Q&A will be happening around 2:45, 2:50. So to introduce our panelists, we have Jillian D. She is the Director of Supply Chain Engagement at Food Corps. We have Dan Sharp. He is the Food Service Director from District 51 in Grand Junction, Colorado. We have Malcolm Sneed. He is the Food Service Director from Creede, Colorado. We have Liza Marin. She's our Executive Director of the San Luis Valley Local Foods Coalition. And we have Marion Kalb. She's the Institutional Food Program Administrator for the City and County of Denver. So let's get started. Question number 1, which is like a full 4-part question. What I would like for our speakers to do to introduce themselves, give us your name, where you're located, the span of your work, how you are involved with school food and or institutional food service programs. And we would also love to hear one thing, which I know is a challenge, but just one thing that you are passionate about when it comes to working in this space and supporting those who work in this space. We will kick it off with Jillian.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jillian D. I am based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I think I was saying I'm the only non-Colorado person on this call, potentially. I'm very happy to be here. I work on Food Corps' national impact team, primarily on supply side strategies for school food. Right now, that looks like supporting and facilitating a working group of school nutrition directors to develop an ingredient guide for better school food purchasing. This is kind of based off of the former School Food Focus ingredient guide, if anyone's familiar with that. It's a tool that aims to empower school nutrition directors in working with their vendors and manufacturers, and it serves to meet schools where they're at. Lately, I've also been supporting our policy team more, so working with our Food Corps state leads to collaborate with farm to school networks in shaping and advocating for policies that would support local procurement, set up statewide grant programs, and ensure that there is technical support and capacity added for districts to do farm to school programming. Prior to that, I was the deputy director at the Common Market here in Philadelphia, which is a food hub that connects institutions with locally sourced sustainable farm foods in the Mid-Atlantic region. I'm passionate about a lot of things in this space, but the thing that I really get excited about is the potential, because institutions buy so much food and they serve so many people. So farm to institution has such a humongous opportunity to create more equity in our food systems and connect people to one another within their local food shed and impact community well-being. So when I think about that, that's the thing that really gets me going.
Thank you. I have so many follow-up questions, especially about that ingredient guide, but we will go ahead and move on to Dan. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Sharp. I'm with Mesa County School District here in Grand Junction, Colorado. And I've been in the school district and school nutrition industry for I'm on my 14th year, but prior to this, I worked in industry. I come from hotels and resorts and a restaurant background. And so probably, you know, how I transitioned from leaving industry work into institutional work really as it was a result of my wife. She saw the amount of hours I was working in hotels and resorts at 70, 80 hours a week and nonstop 7-day-a-week work. And she's like, you know what? I'm working in the school district. I work in this area of support services. I think that with your background in hospitality, you'd be a great fit for the nutrition program. And so really, after I met with the CFO, I was hired based on the fact that I had a business background and had worked in some pretty high-end upscale resorts. And but it was interesting as I came into industry and as I started working in the school district here, I used and leveraged that right away with getting the budget right sized. It was losing about $1 million a year. And so we had to definitely do some staff right sizing through attrition. And then that focus then became on nutrition. It was really, we noticed that the program was really processed food based. I know Jessica and Fernando and the Live Well group, they came in and they did an assessment in our school district back in 2012. And they were huge. And I'll talk more about that later in this presentation, how huge they were in helping us train our staff to be able to do scratch cooking and improve and to be able to transition to a whole food system. And so that was pretty neat, especially coming from a hotel resort background where a lot of the foods that I was working with were in a whole foods kind of environment. And then, as far as passion goes, it's funny, I came in with a passion as a business leader and promoting the fact that I was a former adjunct instructor on principles of leadership and management. And my focus was initially in those areas, and it still is to a degree. But I got to tell you, it's changed completely. Jessica and Fernando and Live Well really helped me see the importance of nutrition and a scratch-based food program in our community and what that does for kids and learning. And then it became hunger. I think the next big shift in our program was realizing that we weren't just a nutrition program, but that we were also a hunger program. So those are my two key passions right now, is the work that we do in our community with nutrition and hunger.
Thank you, Dan, for that. And I will say that I love Dan's logo under his signature. We fuel success. Just succinct and perfect. Malcolm, please, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, I'm Malcolm Sneed. I live here in Creede, Colorado, and I work for the Creede School District. I've been the food service director here in Creede for 5 years now. And I come from the food service industry background, working mainly in restaurants, and things of that sort since I was about 12 years old. My parents got a snow cone stand and put me to work in it. And I just developed a passion for it. And I got into being the food service director here in Creede. And I've just loved every day of it. And it has ignited a new love for food in me and ignited a passion to actually want to teach kids about the food that they eat and what they put in their bodies and what it can potentially do to help or harm their bodies. My favorite thing to do for kids is to introduce them to new cuisines and different foods that might be completely foreign to them, and then have them just love it. Earlier today, I had a student try the roasted beets for the first time that we serve our kids. And she said she absolutely loved them. And she said, I'd never had beets before, and I was always afraid to try them. And she tried them today and loved them. And so it's things like that that makes me super duper passionate about the work I do, and spreading, like I said, the joy of cooking and the joy of knowing how a whole food system can help not only just our bodies, but our whole community.
I love that. And I will say I have had the pleasure to get to know Malcolm over the last probably 2 years. And I remember when we were just beginning our relationship, I was looking through his inventory purchases and saw beef bones on there. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who buys beef bones in a school meal program? And have just been continuously impressed by what he does and the food that he produces for these kids. Let's see. Liza, how about yourself?
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this great panel. My name's Liza Marin. I'm in the San Luis Valley down by the New Mexico border. And I was with Live Well back in 2007, and then the San Luis Valley Local Foods Coalition since we started that in 2009 as a grassroots organization. And I have to give my love and appreciation to Live Well, which is now Nourish Colorado, for their community investments, their school food initiative, and technical assistance that really made it all possible for us down here. So right now, our team of 24, that includes Vistas and other volunteers and staff, are working to build a local food system in our 6-county region. And we do that through supporting soil health. We do farmer incubation. We support food production, aggregation, and food literacy education about why local is important and how to do it. And I'm just really passionate about reconnecting, because I know what it was like for me when I hacked a garden when I was 12 years old out of our suburban lawn that was perfect grass. And I just love connecting people with the historic connection they once had with seeds and soil, the harvest, the farmer, and the story of their food.
That's beautiful, Liza. I love that. And I do love the passion that she brings to the table, where it's not only so much herself, it's very much community-based and community-minded. And that's a beautiful work to really, she's created an incredible program down in San Luis Valley. And last but not least, Marion, please. Oh, got you on mute.
Yep. There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be with you today. My name is Marion Kalb. I work with the City and County of Denver, and I manage the Good Food Purchasing Program. In a previous life, I was co-director for about a decade of the National Farm to School Network, so come from that background. The Good Food Purchasing Program that I work with promotes values-based procurement that includes boosting local economies, environmental sustainability, treating employees well, racial equity, concern for animal welfare, and nutrition and food access. In Denver, we're currently working with 5 institutions to implement the Good Food Purchasing Program, including the city-sponsored Summer Food Service Program, the Denver Sheriff's Department and the city jails, Denver Public Schools, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and Centura Health. All of these institutions are currently undergoing a baseline assessment, which will provide them with a score in each of their value areas. They'll then be developing an action plan to move towards increasing values-based purchasing together on a regional basis. What I am passionate about is may be boring to some, but it is vendor contracts. Through contracts, lowest cost does not have to be the only consideration in purchasing. Including procurement goals and contracts is how we hold companies accountable to consider other characteristics than just the product price. And I'll discuss this in more detail a little later.
Thank you, Marion. And I saw Jillian raising her hands in excitement, and me as well, because you're speaking our language right here. This is how we move the needle. And I figured I should probably introduce myself as well. So I am Jessica Wright. I work at Nourish, Colorado. We recently rebranded from Live Well, Colorado, and I had the opportunity to work with Live Well starting in 2010 via the School Food Initiative, where we supported school districts around the state with their scratch meal preparation and introducing more fresh fruits and vegetables. And we had the opportunity to work with almost 100 school districts out of the 180 that we have in our state during the time period of that program. And then in 2018, the years are flying by fast, we launched LoProCo, Local Procurement Colorado, which basically takes School Food Initiative and hones in our focus on the farm food system arena and how we can really leverage our schools and institutions to basically support the local farms and their local economies. And we do that via regional workshops. And I would say for myself, what I'm most passionate about is actually the workers and training the people who work in these kitchens. We've had a lot of experiences where we go into these kitchens and the cooks are like, I'm just a cook. I have no ability to actually make changes. Like my role, I just show up, I prepare food, and that's all I do. And I love being able to work with these cooks, show them their value, their worth, and get them to own it and to really see like how important their role is when it comes to impacting these children, their lives, and their healthy eating habits for effectively the rest of their lives. So it's incredible. I feel honored to be able to work in this space and get to meet incredible people all around the state and now nationally as well. And for reference, I'm going to quickly share my screen so that you all can have a little picture of the state and where we are. We are in Denver. Dan Sharp is over here in Grand Junction. Malcolm is down in Creed, Colorado, where you have that little red dot. As you can tell, they're pretty isolated down there. It's a beautiful, gorgeous part of Colorado. But it's basically one way in, one way out, unless you have a four-wheel drive vehicle to get out the other way. San Luis Valley is this area down here. Beautiful, gosh, I have just some of the best memories of driving into the valley and the mountain ranges on both sides. And it's a very special place. And Marion is over here in Denver, Colorado with us. So now that you're oriented as to where we are all coming from, and Jillian, obviously, we're over in Pennsylvania. Let's get into our questions. I'm going to start with Liza. So, Liza, you play a critical role in the rebuilding of your local food system, connecting the dots between schools, local foods, and community food access. Tell us a bit more about the magic that happens in the San Luis Valley. What are the key ingredients to helping elevate positive contributions of school food in community?
Yay, thank you. Well, that's a great question. So the truth is farm to school work is at the foundation of many of the coalition strategies and beginnings. So I'm going to start by telling the story of the Child at Heart Food Service Directors Network. So back in the day, we brought all of our 14 school districts food service directors together to talk farm to school. And one director brought an impassioned 3-page speech about how cooks are blamed for slopping grease to our kids and being the cause of childhood obesity, while in reality, directors are working with strict nutrition guidelines. They have mounds of paperwork. They work with minuscule budgets that districts are always asking them to slash. And I was once on a school board that was doing that to our Mountain Valley School District, and dealing with children who come to school hungry, who throw fruits and veggies in the trash, who show up with hot Cheetos and Mountain Dews. And in reality, the cooks just have the child at heart. And so we coined the network, the Child at Heart Food Service Directors Network. And boy, did we learn a lot about the perspectives of the kitchen and the cooks. Invaluable. So we're in an 8,000 square mile region with about 46,000 people in it. And Malcolm Sneed is one of those. And we have abundant agriculture. So we're talking about very rural schools from under 100 students to one district with over 3,000. And so back in 2012, we, in preparation for Colorado Proud School Meal Day, commissioned 2 local farms to donate, not get paid for, but donate organic fingerling potatoes and Bangor carrots to us. And the food service directors, they planned recipes, they put in orders for how much produce they need, and coalition volunteers delivered that produce to the kitchens. We provided farmer story posters and took lots of pictures, and the event was featured on the front pages of all our newspapers and fulfilled the advice from Krista Garand, which is Durango's rock star food service director, who inspired us early on, sharing that her farm to school work would hit the press and would sometimes be the only positive press the school district would be getting, and it built a lot of support for their program. So after our event, schools wanted more, but they didn't have time to go to the farms, and the farmers wanted more, but they thought it might be illegal to pull up to the back of a school and unload produce. So next we partnered with the Rocky Mountain Prevention Research Center and conducted a survey with the full set of direct market farmers. They had to grow food and they had to make it available to San Luis Valley eaters. So out of that process, we learned that 96% of the 65 qualifying producers felt that a food aggregation and distribution hub was needed. And 77% said they would participate. And 66% stated they were willing to raise new products for farm to school. So that was really inspiring. And after a lot of work, the Valley Roots Food Hub was launched in the summer of 2015. And in 2017, we obtained a USDA Farm to School grant that built capacity at the Food Hub to do things like make carrot sticks and carrot coins, and to build its food safety program, not only with the hub, but with the participating producers. And then to launch a Farm to School program with our districts, which included my most fun part, which was Harvest of the Month events, where we bring in farmers, we dress up in costumes, we'd pass around local foods like hors d'oeuvres, fancy hors d'oeuvres, and students had student voting fun and all kinds of things like that. And then we ended with all districts' kitchens receiving their own Farm to School kit at the end of the grant. And so the Valley Roots Food Hub was invaluable to this process. And in 2020, we have hit almost $1 million in sales, which for a food hub is a magic number. Of the 14 school districts, we have about 6 who've incorporated Farm to School as a regular practice, including 1 rock star on this panel. We've also, thanks to the advocacy of Jennifer Delaporte at CDPHE, worked with Farm to Early Childhood, and thanks to Live Well Funds, have been able to distribute summer fresh boxes to WIC families and seniors. And Adams State is a big customer of the Food Hub. They really, so we have Farm to University as well. COVID's caused a big hit. Sadly, most schools went virtual or went to processed packaged meals and shut down salad bars we worked so hard to build, but hopefully that'll all be coming back. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Liza. And I share your hope for a future of salad bars again as well. Dan, let's hear from you. So from your experience in District 51, Grand Junction, and having a good grasp of the work that it takes to actually implement and sustain efforts such as scratch-made meals and local sourcing, can you share for us a few obstacles that you've overcome and what has most helped you overcome them?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, one of the largest obstacles we had, it's a larger district in the state. We're one of the, I think the 14th largest now in the state of Colorado with 22,000 enrollment and with 40 schools and 120 employees of our culinary staff at those 40 schools. And so one of the largest challenges we had, because we did not want to adopt a central kitchen structure or system, we decided we wanted to do standalone sites where they did their own production cooking so they could have that pride of quality of food in each of their own kitchens. And so to transition those kitchens to go to scratch kitchens did take a couple of things. One was it took equipment, it took funding. And so the Colorado Health Foundation, which Live Well helped us connect that link to get that funding, was huge. We garnered over 3 different grants, about $1.5 million, which helped pay for the food processors, the immersion blenders, the salad spinners, all the things, and other tools, steamers, kettles, all the things that we needed to be able to do a great job with scratch food cooking. And then the other piece, Jessica and Fernando coming down and doing training with our employees. And like she stated and cited at the start, the pride that she felt when she was training cooks who just thought of themselves as cooks, to really realize the impact that they were making with good quality scratch food. And so they did that for us. And so that was a big part of our success, and a huge obstacle was that training piece. And it still is to a degree. I think my fellow food directors will attest to staffing is always a constant challenge. We're constantly looking for and recruiting and retaining staff and keeping them trained up on doing scratch meals. And so that's always an ongoing challenge. But Jessica and the team would come down when I requested. I think we did 3 additional trainings in our district that Jessica, Fernando, and that team came down to help do follow-up training and to keep things rolling. And right now, Jessica, believe it or not, we're in our 9th year of that transition. I know. So kudos to you and your team. And I want to tell you this, even though most school meal programs across the country really had to flip their programs and completely shift to more of a grab and go curbside meal service during the key parts of the pandemic, we were real concerned about going right back into mostly a processed food environment. And I'm proud to say that We started the school year in in-person learning. Our district, as one of the largest districts in the state, has remained in-person learning for the most part of the first half of the school year. And that menu that we do is the same menu we've done every other year. We maintained our primary scratch-based menu in all of our schools. Yes, the salad bars did have to get changed to where kids couldn't help themselves because of the concern for pathogens being transferred there. But we just had our staff serve those same fresh fruits and vegetables off of the line. It did put more of a burden on our staff, and we're still working through some ideas on that. We're actually doing more packaging of our fruits and vegetables on the salad bar so kids can still go up to the salad bar and make their own choices. But it does create more work for our staff to be able to do that. But it's worthwhile work, because we all know when kids can choose their own fruits and vegetables off the salad bar, most likely they're going to eat more of it. We'll have less food waste, and we'll have more consumption.
Thank you, Dan, for that. And thank you for the kind words as well. I will say, though, that it is truly the leadership of someone like yourself who keeps this work going and sustains it as well. And I'm glad to have been a part of your success. I'm glad that our team was able to be a part of your success. It truly is you and your team who is keeping this going. And we can talk about Dan and the lunch lizard and all that for hours. We only have an hour. So we are going to move on to Malcolm. So Malcolm, as a food service director of a very rural mountain community, what role does your school meal program provide when it comes to food access, nutrition education, and exposure to foods? And what partners, alliances have helped you to do this?
Well, I'd just like to start off by saying that our school district is about 92 students, and that's K through 12. So there are a lot of issues that I have that larger school districts don't have, and they have issues that I don't have. But you know, we have a 2-person staff, which is myself and my kitchen manager, Jackie. And we've been doing just about, well, this year in particular, 90% of our food is scratch cooked. It was, partnership working with, like Live Well Colorado and the Valley Roots Food Hub. We bring in food from all over the San Luis Valley to show the kids the bountifulness of the area that we live in, because so many people think that the San Luis Valley just grows hops for Coors beer and potatoes, but and carrots and things like that. But there's such a wide variety of foods that come from here. And when the kids learn, that the food is coming from, a farm that's right next door to, say, where their aunts or uncle live, it encourages them from what I've seen to try new things. And the kids that don't have the access, the ones that generally are eating like processed foods at home, I've noticed, like it takes a little bit longer for them to start to wanting to try the scratch made and non-processed foods. But once they do, I get a lot of love, let's call it, from parents saying that, when they try to make stuff, their kids will tell them, like that's not as good as the way Mr. Malcolm makes it. And I always tell them, please don't tell your mom that. I don't need that kind of trouble when I'm in the grocery stores, but it warms my heart to see that it is actually making an effect, to where they're encouraging their parents even to serve more scratch made food. And that alone, makes me feel like I'm doing a great part to help the nutrition in our community, the nutrition levels come up, and like I said before, the Valley Roots Food Hub, I could not do this without them. They have been there, just like Liza was saying, when she helped get the Child at Heart food service directors meetings together and everything. I was a part of those meetings, and it really helped me to think about the way I wanted my food service program to run. Because my first year as the food service director, I basically just ran things status quo using the pre-made hamburger patties that I got from USDA commodities and things of that sort. And then once I learned the bounty of fresh food that was just, a few, 45-minute drive from us down the road, I decided, one year I'm gonna, put $500 of my annual budget towards this food, and then a little bit more each year. And now I'm ordering from the Food Hub every other week. And like I said, I could not be doing this without them and without people like Liza helping us getting the farm to school. When we would do the what's it called, the when we'd have farmers come in, and she would talk to the farmers and let them know that it might be a little bit of a drive to get to Creed, but they would come here and talk to our students, and it was great. We have a great system here in the San Luis Valley that is very much promoting local foods and scratch cooked meals for school kids.
That's amazing, Malcolm. Thank you very much. And I think it reinforces one of our own. We have many mantras, but one is start small and take small steps towards actually creating your change, because so many people, they just want to do it all. And that creates more challenges than it actually should. On to Jillian. So Food Court has a beautiful and comprehensive vision for food policy change that honors the people involved, as well as all of the tools that they need to be able to provide nourishing food to all kids. What is one area of this policy vision where you see great things happening in the USA? And what is one area of your policy vision where you think we are still very far from where we need to be? And we will link in and share their policy vision for you all to access as well.
Thank you. That'd be great. So in terms of great things happening, I think it's unfortunate that this had to happen because of a pandemic, but so it is. We are seeing a lot of support and rallying for universal meals all across the country right now. Last month, Food Corps, along with 63 other national organizations, sent a letter to the incoming administration urging them to establish universal school meals. So I think beyond the usual suspects, we actually have many more people who are starting to understand the importance of school meals and the valuable role that they play to combat food insecurity. I also think that farm to school and the importance of local food systems has gotten more visibility since the pandemic, reaching new audiences. For example, early in the pandemic, I was speaking with staff at a few state agencies who administer statewide farm to school programs. And in Georgia, for example, one of the people I was speaking with was saying, people are working from home now, and parents are just so much more engaged in our social media and aware of our programs. We have a strawberry and greens week every single year, but this is the first time that some parents have ever even noticed. Another example from Maine, because they'd lost their restaurant sales, a farmer had this massive amount of blueberries to move, and he was actually able to sell them for a fair price to a school that was just down the street. And this completely new market connection and relationship has opened the door for future sales opportunities. So I think people in general began to see the local food chain as more reliable during the pandemic in some ways, a place that they could go to because of those relationships and the ability that local food systems has to more quickly pivot than the larger national supply chain. In terms of far from where we need to be, I think in particular, ensuring dedicated support for producers of color to enter and compete in the school food marketplace, I think we have a pretty long way to go for that. It's really difficult for farmers to sell directly to schools for many different reasons that some of the other panelists have mentioned, the complex procurement rules, economies of scale, logistics. But on top of all these barriers, farmers of color have even further setbacks because of the history of discrimination against them. So, for example, there's also this long legacy of distrust between Black farmers and the USDA that persists even today. And because USDA agencies provide loans and grants and technical assistance to farmers, and this has happened in a historically completely inequitable way that's resulted in massive land loss and disinvestment from rural Black communities. But even here, there's opportunity right now. I'm not sure if folks have heard about Senators Booker, Warren, and Gillibrand have introduced the Justice for Black Farmers Act. And it's a start to repair the damage and really build toward a better future for farmers of color. The act would do things like put policies in place to end discrimination within USDA, protect Black farmers from losing their land and restore land that's been lost. And it would provide funding to HBCUs to create a new generation of Black farmers. So if you haven't heard about this act yet, I definitely encourage you all to check out the press release and the summary on Senator Cory Booker's website, and definitely support this act when the time comes.
Thank you, Jillian, for bringing that up. And that's definitely something I'll add to my radar as something to look into. I appreciate that. And finally, we're going to go to Marion. So we spend a lot of time talking about the power of school food to address community food access and provide markets for local growers and so much more. But this is also a lot of pressure on a very underfunded system. Tell us about where you see exciting developments with other institutions. What other institutions are allies in this movement, and how do you see them working alongside schools?
Great, thanks, Jess. Here in Colorado, we have a couple different things happening. One is, some of you may have heard about, there is a group purchasing program beginning to form, and it is the BEAN project, BEAN as in Pintos, and it's being sponsored by Boulder County Public Health and Healthcare Without Harm. And Boulder is basically facilitating the grower contact, and Healthcare Without Harm is providing technical assistance, marketing materials to institutions. And they are both working to directly connect Colorado bean producers with institutional buyers. Currently, there are 90,000 pounds of pinto beans in storage at the East Denver Food Hub. And these are available for purchase for any buyers that may be on the line here. And the East Denver Food Hub is also able to provide some distribution services. And I'm not sure, this may actually connect up with Liza and San Luis Valley at some point as well. So there are several hospitals and a number of government-run prisons that are purchasing large amounts of beans through this project. It is certainly possible to expand this to Colorado schools. I think that Boulder Valley School District is already participating. And a huge advantage of this project is that it's also helping a food hub business grow and expand. And that comes with it greater possibilities for using the food hub and other food hubs like Liza's in the future. And I think that the really exciting element to this project as well is that the bean farmer is using public lands through the Department of Parks and Open Space in Boulder in order to grow the beans. Another exciting development, maybe not quite as exciting depending on what floats your boat, but it's happening with Centura Health. And Centura food purchasers have been asked to change their purchasing in a couple different ways. First, they've been asked to streamline the number of vendors from whom they purchase. Second, they've been asked to purchase more from Colorado producers. So these are somewhat seemingly contradictory goals. But what it means is that Centura is able to purchase local products in multiple ways, which isn't always the case with institutions. So they can purchase products locally from growers. They can also access local products through brokers and distributors. Now, if you're a food buyer, we've heard a little bit about this from Dan, there's certainly less paperwork and fewer processes if you can order from a limited number of vendors. Through the GFPP program, we are connecting producers, brokers, and distributors to help qualified growers to sell through these businesses. Some growers may have the capacity to sell through brokers, which makes it easier for the food buyer. And the more that we can help producers sell through established channels, that will help streamline purchasing not only for Centura, but also for any institution using these same intermediaries. And there's really not that many of them. There's a handful. And that said, I would also emphasize that it's always good to remember that farmers receive more of the food dollar if they sell direct. And I want to go to LA just for a minute and give you an example of how large purchases can include value-based purchasing. So LAUSD has 700,000 students and a $50 million food budget. And through the GFPP, they've been able to double their local produce purchases from $4 to $8 million. This resulted in 50 new jobs for Fresh Fields, the produce distributor. LAUSD has also prioritized purchasing products from businesses with employee unions and has been instrumental in increasing wages for one vendor's employees. Here in Denver, the 5 institutions that we're working with have a combined purchasing power of over $27.5 million. So with large budgets or the combined purchasing power of Denver institutions, not only can GFPP change the landscape for small and medium-sized businesses, it can also result in more jobs, lower prices for institutions, and the incorporation of values-based procurement. And it can lead to centralized purchasing, with one purchasing body reducing administrative costs for multiple institutions. And so we'll talk about more examples a little later.
I have to say, I am really excited about the possibilities of actually bringing all of the institutions within a region together to group their purchasing and focus on some small, local, medium-sized farmers and get these products in a way that's a bit more streamlined. So very exciting stuff. And also, as a time check, we are probably running a little bit over. So as we run into the next section, let's just be aware of that. So we're going to lead with Malcolm. And now it's time to start thinking big, visions, possibilities, opportunities. So Malcolm, one of our favorite questions. Let's say that you had a magic wand and all of the supporting policies, tools, and resources that you would ever want came to be. What would your kitchen look like? What would your cafeteria look like? Please describe a day in the life of this dream for us.
If I had that magic wand, it would be a much longer than 4-minute dream, but I will try to compress it down. We'd start off the day like we always do, coming in and getting the ovens going so that we can bake bread ourselves, and getting the all of our food processing equipment going, chopping all the vegetables and things of that sort for the day. We would, if we didn't have to deal with COVID, we would have a salad bar that would it would blow your mind. I mean, if you've ever been to a Shoney's or those old restaurants where salad bars used to be a big thing, and they would have like a 10-foot long salad bar with everything that you could imagine, fresh fruits and vegetables on it. It would be an amazing just display of fresh, raw fruits and vegetables and meats that were procured from local farmers, because any chef can tell you a meat that comes from closer to you than from a large industrial, meat processing facility is going to taste way better, and it's going to do more to benefit your whole economy. I would love to have first name, one-on-one relationships with the farmers in my area, and in doing that, be able to access more of their summer produce that I could feed the children in the wintertime, when, up here in Colorado, even if you want to get fresh produce, it's almost impossible, but we keep trying. But yeah, that's my dream scenario for if I had things my way with the magic wand, on short.
Thank you for that. And I love that you brought up extending the growing season into the winter, because Wendy, myself, and others at Nourish have talked a lot about farm to freezer and what can we do to actually make this a reality. So thank you. Liza, on to you. Similar question, magic wand. So all the supporting, are you ready to go? Everything's in place. What does your community look like? What does a day in the life look like for the growers and the families down in the valley?
All right. Well, I went a little broader than the valley. I kind of went for the whole planet, but
I love it.
I feel the sparks from my magic wand. So I feel like so much hinges on farmers being paid a large percentage of the food dollar and getting the real value of the food that it takes them to produce, the cost it takes them to produce, and that we have strong, resilient, short supply chains, and that food hubs and nodes spring up in all agricultural community regions and in urban communities, and that Local aggregation, delivery, and refrigeration infrastructure is well funded and well built and is run by renewable energy. Farmers are being paid a living wage. Well, I already talked about that, and are well supported by families, schools, institutions, grocers, restaurants, even prisons prioritize good food. Farm workers are valued, well paid, and protected, which hinges on farmers being paid a living wage, because the reason farm workers are so squeezed is because the farmer is got such a teeny slice of the food dollar, and it's just not sustainable. That agriculture is the center of carbon sequestration and climate mitigation. New regenerative oriented farmers are coming into production because they know they can make a good living at it. Families are food literate, know how to, and are able to access healthy local foods. They know how to forage, garden, prepare, and preserve foods. We eat more seasonally and more organically for the good of the earth, the farm workers, and health. Our schools' cafeterias are as important as a classroom. And like in Japan, schools use their cafeterias as educational spaces. And they have gardens and farms that are instructional outdoor laboratories, and that food service directors look like Malcolm and our fellow from Grand Junction. They're well trained, well paid, and they love good food. And that we increase public food budgets so that we can buy the best food, not the cheapest food. And we understand that food is medicine. That we have a local food system loving Secretary of Agriculture. We break up big multinational conglomerates in the food industry and lift up the family farmer and local food systems. And Marion, your good work with the Good Food Purchasing Program, policies are in place. Local economies are infused with local foods, and policies like New Mexico that actually fund farm to school, and their state budgets are robustly funded in Colorado. And finally, just that people slow down, gather together at community and family tables to share good food, stories, and enjoy good health.
Full body chills. Not lying. That was incredible, Liza. Thank you so much. And I am happy to join you on that path towards making that vision a reality. Dan, on to you. So you've done a lot in Grand Junction, and we're going to ask you, what more do you believe school food can do for the community? And what do you think we need to help get us there?
Well, like Liza said, I kind of my answer is larger than just the Mesa County and Grand Junction area. This year, the pandemic really has had a silver lining for us school food service directors and school meal programs, because it really made us not only have to create new ways and systems to feed the hungry, which are a lot of them are our students in our communities, but it really helped show us how important our programs are for not just nutrition, but hunger. And in that, my big pitch, and I think the work that we need to do, and I hope Nourish Colorado takes it on as a key initiative. I believe for our future sustainability, to be able to continue doing local farm to school work and pay a living wage to our farmers, and to be able to do the lunch blizzard food truck program that we do, where we take meals out to the high poverty areas and inequitable areas in our community where they can get that kind of food. All of those things that we do that are wonderful initiatives, the scratch cooking initiatives. I think for us, you might not know this, but last fourth quarter of the end of the school year, me and most school districts across the country continued to pay our employees their full wage, even though our schools were not doing in-person learning. Well, that was a pretty big hit on our budgets. All school meal programs are separately financed. And our program lost a significant amount, over $500,000 in just the 2 months that we were not in school. And I'm not even one of the larger programs in the state. And even though we were able to shift immediately into an emergency meal curbside program during that time frame, we were still operating at only 25% of our normal capacity when we have all schools open. So my big pitch is I believe we need to continually extend to get away from all of the regulatory things that drag us down as directors with provision programs and community elegy programs that require a lot of these hurdles to be able to do what we're doing now. Right now, I'm only operating at 80% capacity because of online and remote learners, but because of the reimbursement is much higher with the summer program than it is the normal reimbursement program, we're actually making more money than we did last year at this time for the first half of the school year. That's helping us recoup that $500,000 that we lost last year. And the long story, or the short story of all of this is that I believe when we reauthorize the National School Lunch Program nationally going forward, we need to get FRAC, we need to get Hunger Free Colorado, we need to get Share Our Strength, we need to get Nourish Colorado, everybody on board to listen and hear the directors for us to be able to sustain our farm to school efforts, for us to be able to reach out into our communities and to be able to be the hunger program, which we are. We are the primary hunger programs in our community. For us to continue that work and sustain it, we need to go to a universal meal system where no longer applications have to be completed for people to get. And I think that's going to deal with equity issues. No longer do we have to worry about kids standing in line thinking, oh, that's the free kid over there because they're getting a school meal. All of the stigma, all of the burden and administrative burden of the work it takes to run these programs goes away. We can just focus on good quality food, good healthy food, and locally sourced and all those things. So that's going to be my big push over the next year, 2 years, is really helping to do my part to help lobby for that and to be a voice for that.
Thank you, Dan. And I will say, you know, it's hard to find positive moments from the whole pandemic, but I'm with all of you that right now the time is ripe to push for universal access to meals. The school districts have already been doing it for almost a full year now. Communities are comfortable with it. They've started to almost expect it. There's no reason to go back at this point. So for all of you on the call who are interested in advocacy, please, we need more voices. We can never have too many people fighting for this because it's so valuable and so important. Jillian, on to you. So tell us about your roadmap to achieve your powerful policy vision. What role can we each play? This is a great, segue in. And what is one thing that can happen at the local, state, and federal level?
It really is going to take all of us to pull this off. It's a pretty ambitious policy vision. And I really mean it when I say that everybody has a role to play. In particular, we need the voices of people who are most impacted and closest to the issue to inform the solution, exactly as Dan was just describing. Like, we need the voices of food service directors at the front end of policy change. We will need diverse coalitions to come and advocate together. I'll admit I'm pretty new to policy. So as a novice, sometimes I get a little bit overwhelmed not knowing where to begin. So this question was actually a really good exercise for me in like how one can identify locus of control. So I came up with a list of things that I'll share. The first one that everybody can do is just to educate yourself on school food issues if you're a novice to this. So some of the newer books that I read this year that I thought were pretty good are Labor of Lunch by Jennifer Gaddis and Kid Food by Bettina Siegel. I think they were both pretty good. Yes, great book. And Free for All by Janet Popadick is one that's been out for a while. It's a fantastic book. Especially if you're a parent, become an ally of your school food service department and really get to know them and what their goals are and how you as a parent can support them. I would say people can meet and organize with others involved in the school food community and try to collaborate with unlikely allies. What would happen if our school food service workers shared goals with educators and administrators of their district, or if more students were empowered to have a say in what's for lunch? Are you aware of any statewide efforts that are already underway? That's another good thing to look into. Some Google searching can tell you what your state departments of education and agriculture are doing, and likely have some ways that you can kind of plug in and get involved to what's happening in your community and in your state. We are hopefully on our way to universal meals, we'll see. But in the meantime, you can see if schools in your state are participating in CEP, which is the community eligibility provision. This allows low-income schools to offer free breakfast and lunch if 40% of students already qualify for federal anti-poverty programs. So that's kind of the stepping stone to universal meals. I think everybody could take an anti-racism training if you haven't done that, because doing this work really means unlearning some of the things so that we can actually imagine and effectively build new equitable processes and farm to school programs. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't say you can sign up for Food Corps policy action alerts and learn about our timely opportunities to get involved at the federal level in having your voice heard.
Very well done, Jillian, and a lot of tangible things that people can do, because I feel like that's what we're always looking for, myself included, is I need a task. I'm very task oriented. So thank you for that. And I will say, we're going to close this out with Marion. So today we focus primarily on schools. However, as you have already noted, all of our institutions can drive the needle when it comes to making changes within our food system. But what needs to change at the state and our federal level to make this easier, to make this the norm for all different types of institutions? What's it going to take?
Well, first of all, about at least a 10-year timeline, maybe 15. So let's just get that out there right away. Although I think that universal free lunch could actually happen sooner, and I'm a huge proponent of that. And I think that's probably the biggest policy change that could make the most difference. I think for me, one of the major challenges facing institutions is the need to accept the lowest price bid. And I believe it's time to challenge this entrenched procurement practice. The assumption behind accepting lowest price bid is that it is the best use of the taxpayer dollar. However, when the lowest price food means that companies pay their workers poverty wages or have no health benefits, is this in the best interest of the taxpayer? If food companies get rid of their waste by polluting air and water, is that in the best interest of the people? If people of color are excluded from procurement bids, is this in the people's best interest? I would argue that many consumers, many people care about these issues. And if they knew what was entailed in taking the lowest bid, that they would have some issue with that. And that's why I get excited about contracts and policy, because what the GFPP does in its contracts is it asks vendors how they will improve their purchasing to support the values of the Good Food Purchasing Program. And it takes those answers into account when awarding the bid. So lowest cost is still a factor, but it is not the only factor. And I think where we look at policy for this is we take our nod from what's happened within the world of promoting local foods. So for example, a goal for the city of Denver is to purchase 25% local products by 2030. Well, what if the goal was to purchase 25% of products from businesses owned by people of color or ranchers with grass-fed beef? In the New York School City District, if schools purchase 30% of their food locally, they receive a 25% increase in the reimbursement rate. Well, what if that 25% reimbursement rate could be achieved by purchasing from companies that care about the environment or are paying a living wage? I think we have a precedent here with providing exceptions in procurement policy for purchasing local product. We have consumers that care about these issues, and we have institutions exploring ways to implement values-based purchasing. Institutional purchasing is a $120 billion market. Now is the time to start challenging the notion of cheap food and build a better city and state with institutions that come together and use their food dollars and purchasing power to prioritize the health and well-being of people, animals, and the environment.
Thank you, Marion. That was beautiful. And I like to say our institutions aren't going anywhere. Our schools are here, our hospitals are here. Why aren't we leveraging their dollars to really support their own local economies? So very excited. We are right at 3 o'clock, and there's a handful of questions that did come in. However, I think what would probably make the most sense is I will work with all of our panelists to get the questions answered, and then we will send them back out as a nice little follow-up to this call so that you all can make sure that the questions are answered as they were asked. I will also make sure that we link in if you want to learn any more about the work that we're doing at Nourish, Colorado. You're more than welcome to visit our brand new gorgeous website, www.nourishcolorado.org. And within all of that, one thing I do want to say, which I think is very important to end, is that if you are a parent, if you have children that go to your schools, participate in the school